Hi everyone, welcome back to the Comptia Network Plus course. ICA, Independent Computing Architecture. ICA is a protocol designed by Citrix Systems to provide communications between servers and clients. The most common application that uses ICA is Citrix's WinFrame, which administrators can use to set up Windows applications on a Windows-based server, and that allows clients with virtually any operating system to access those applications. Client computers running Linux, Unix or Mac OSs can access Windows-based applications with the help of WinFrame, giving network administrators all kinds of flexibility with client operating systems. But again, there's a downside. Connections like these tend to be slow because of the huge amount of translation that's required to enable the client and the server to communicate with each other properly. SSH Secure Shell is a network protocol that is designed as an alternative to command-based utilities such as Telnet that transmit requests and response in clear text. It creates a secure channel between the devices and provides confidentiality and integrity of the data transmission. It uses public key cryptography to authenticate the remote computer and allow the remote computer to authenticate the user if necessary. The public key is placed on any computer that must allow access to the owner of a matching private key. The owner keeps the private key is in secret. The private key is never transferred through the network during the authentication. Out-of-band management. Out-of-band management refers to any method of managing the server that does use the network. An example of this technology is integrated lights out, or ILO, a technology embedded into HP servers that allow for out-of-band management of the server. The physical connection is an Ethernet port that will be on the server that will be labelled ILO. With ILO. In figure 1311, one of these ILO ports is shown in an HP Moonshot chassis. These hold blade servers. HP ILO functions out of box without additional software needed regardless of the server's state of operation, giving you complete access to the server from any location via a web browser or the ILO mobile app. Console router. Another example of an out-of-band connection is the console port on a router or switch. This is a physical connection to the device that does not use the network, and as such represents another example. VNC, Virtual Network Computing, is a remote desktop sharing system that uses the Remote Frame Buffer RFB protocol. If it is platform independent and provides an experience much like Remote Desktop Protocol RDP. VNC includes the following components: VNC server, software that runs on the machine sharing its screen; VNC client or viewer, software on the machine that is remotely receiving the shared screen; VNC protocol RDP. One difference in VNC and RDP is that VNC sends raw pixel data, which does not make it work on any desktop type, while RDP uses graphic primitives or higher level commands for the screen transfer process. Managing user account and password security. A whole bunch of authentication schemes are used today, and although it's important to know about these different schemes and how they work, all that knowledge doesn't equal power if your network users aren't schooled on how to manage their user account names and passwords correctly. This is because if bad guys get their hands on usernames and passwords. It gives them a way to get into your network. Worse, if a hacker gains the administrator account name and password for your network, it does not matter what authentication protocol or server you're using. The hacker isn't just going to get in, they're going to get in armed with the escalated rights that type of account allows, meaning that they can do some serious damage. With that in mind, let's get into some solid ways to manage user accounts and passwords, and follow that up by talking about the key authentication methods in use today. Usernames and passwords are vital to network security because their whole purpose is to control initial access to the network. Even if the system administrator assigns individual usernames and passwords, users can and often do change them, so you need to make sure the network users know the difference between a good password and a bad one, and how to keep their passwords safe from theft. I'll cover the important security issues related to user account and password management. Moreover, in the following sections, I'll discuss the more secure methods of authentication, two-factor and multi-factor authentication, and a widely used concept in the enterprise networks, single sign-on. Managing user accounts. So your first step in managing access to the network resources is through user accounts and the rights you assign to the network resources. Systems administrators usually maintain user accounts on a daily basis, doing things like renaming accounts and setting the number of simultaneous connections. You can also specify where users can log in, how often and when, plus you can adjust how often their passwords expire and eliminate when their accounts expire as well. Disabling accounts. This is important. So remember, when a user leaves the organization, you have these three options: leave the account in place, delete the account, disable the account. The first option is not so good, because if you just leave the account in place, anyone, including the user whom it belongs to, can still log in as that user if they know the password. This is clearly bad security. But deleting the accounts presents its own set of problems. If you delete the accounts, the numeric ID associated with that user, UID in Unix and SID in Windows Server, will be lost. And it's through this magic number that passwords and rights to network resources are associated with that user account. This can be a good thing, but if you want to create a new user account with the same name as the one you deleted, the identification number of the new account will be different from the old one, so none of the settings will be there for the new account. This means that disabling an account until you've made a decision about what should happen to it is your best bet, because you'll probably just want to rename the account when someone new is hired. When you disable an account, it still exists, but no one can log into it. Another good time to disable an account is when someone leaves for an extended period, like taking maternity, paternity leave, or other medical leaves, or going on sabbatical. Because it's really common for companies today to have contract and temporary employees, you need to know how to manage temporary accounts that will be used only for a short time period and then disabled. Managing these temporary accounts is easy. You just set up the account to expire on the employee's expected last day of work. Setting up anonymous accounts. Anonymous accounts allow only extremely limited access for a large number of users who all log in with the same username, for instance, and anonymous or guest. These logins are frequently used to access FTP files. You gain access when you log in with the username anonymous and enter your email address as the password. It's obviously a very bad idea to use anonymous accounts for regular network access. You just can't track them. All Windows Server products from Windows NT come with anonymous accounts guest disabled, and it's usually a good thing to leave it that way. When you want to enable that account, like at a public kiosk, make sure you carefully manage what it is able to access by implementing strict group policies. Some web servers create an internet user account to allow anonymous access to the website, though through which a user is allowed to access the web server over the network. The password is always blank. You never see a request login to the server because it's done automatically. Without this kind of account, no one will be able to access your web pages. Limiting connections. There is a good reason to limit how many times a user can connect to the network. Users should normally be logged into the network for one instance because they can only be in one place at a time. So if your system is telling you that someone is logged in for more than one place, it's probably because someone else is using their account. By disallowing simultaneous connections, only a single user at a single workstation can gain access to the network using a specific user account. But there are times that some users need to log in multiple times to use certain applications or perform certain tasks, and you can allow that specific user to have multiple concurrent connections. You may also want to limit the specific location from which the user logs in, because most of the time your users will be logging onto the network only from their workstations. This makes sense, but this rule isn't usually enforced because sometimes users move around without taking their computers with them, or they log in at someone else's station to get their jobs done. So unless you require super tight security, imposing this rule can really complicate your job because it requires a lot of administration. Windows Server products can limit which stations a user is allowed to log in from, but they don't do it by default. All Windows features that is enabled by default is not allowing average users to log in at the server console because they shouldn't be working directly on a server. They can do some serious damage accidentally. So I'm going to leave it here today for this video. If you like listening, please consider like, sharing and subscribing. Thank you.